Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. Eloise broke my heart. I know that I should have been more astute and sophisticated in this whole matter. However, in fact, I am still a farm boy, even after all these years. I am Walter Stillman, a future tax lawyer by profession. I know it's boring, right? But it's still more depressing. Having just graduated from law school and received a master's degree in taxation, I was able to get a single job in the bankruptcy department of one of the mid-sized law firms in Manhattan. My position belongs to the smallest area of the firm's practice and, I must say, the least desirable. My living conditions are as modest as my job. Rents in New York are notoriously high. At that time, apartments in Manhattan were inaccessible to junior employees. In those areas that are called outer, prices were almost as high. After a long search, I found a room in an apartment with two other impoverished souls at the end of a subway line in Brooklyn. The neighborhood was in general decline, and it took forever to get to my office. In short, I have a modest job and a roof over my head. More than this could not be said about the beginning of my career in a great city in the East. However, luck seemed to have changed almost from the day I started work. The firm's bankruptcy partner was Eric Erickson. This is a gray-haired fox in his early 60s. He was one of the de facto deans of the New York Bankruptcy Bar Association, a person who gets calls about difficult or new issues. He has little patience for the ignorant or the incompetent, but he was a good and willing teacher. Many years later, I am still grateful to Mr. Erickson. He, as these city dwellers say, did everything for me. He was my mentor and friend and taught me skills that served me well in the days that followed. Without knowing it at the time, I found my place in life. And then, by pure chance, he found happiness. But first, I needed to break my heart. In the bankruptcy department, mostly only Mr. Erickson and I worked. In those prosperous times, bankruptcy was the least popular practice at the prestigious firm of Portman and Rosenkrantz. If we needed help, two part-time lawyers were willing to help, albeit reluctantly. I graduated in law, which can be said to be written by Lewis Carroll, a jurisdiction where the left is the right and the right is always wrong. All the laws belong to Alice on the other side of the looking glass. The only member of my senior class at Northwestern University School of Law who traveled as far east as I did was Chuck Thompson. We weren't great friends in law school, however. We were brought closer by our Midwestern acquaintance with the Midwest in a cold eastern metropolis. Chuck worked, or rather, he was a slave, at the Manhattan District Attorney's office. He was recently married to Carol, a girl from New York. An invitation to dinner at their Manhattan apartment was quite natural. Upon arrival, I was stunned by the presence of a tall, extremely attractive woman. Eloise Schaffer was elegant in New York. This is the most visual way to describe it. She was a sophisticated New Yorker with a laid-back manner that suggested that her striking appearance was to be expected. One could almost believe that the perfection of her forms was a fact of nature, and not the result of long hours of work and ingenuity. Why she became my dinner partner at my friend's house, I had no idea. This black-haired, green-eyed beauty was no match for me. Indeed, no one could have expected that she would be interested in an ordinary-looking farm boy working as a junior assistant. But apparently Carol Thompson, in her matchmaker's wisdom, thought otherwise. An evening of delightful communication awaited me. Eloise Schaffer was not just a beauty, she had what is called personality. Extroverted and not at all shy, she was a great dinner companion. She asked me to take her home to her Brooklyn apartment. I was hoping to get a taxi, but she insisted that we take the subway. She stayed by my side during the trip from Chelsea in Manhattan to Boerum Hill in Brooklyn. It was a trip that took a lot of time at night and included a short walk. She used this time to get to know me better, bombarding me with questions, the answers to which she listened attentively. It was an intoxicating, ego-boosting experience. At the door of her apartment, she insisted on giving me a kiss for my efforts to escort her home. It was a scalding hot kiss, with a tongue in my throat. She acknowledged this fact with a knowing smile, patiently waiting for the dumb farm boy to receive the message. Can I see you again?" I asked. With some effort, we found a mutually acceptable time for our official first date, and then, after kissing me with a second but less heated kiss, she wished me good night. I flew off to my filthy apartment at the far end of Flatbush Avenue, not believing that I could be so lucky. 5 weeks and 4 dates later, I was in a deep valley of despair. The night before, Eloise had informed me that she would not be able to see me over the weekend. The reason was her previous commitment to another. With great difficulty, I got the name Rodrigo Ruiz out of Eloise. It was easy to find this person. He was the state labor commissioner, a very tall, handsome older man, with whom one would expect intimacy from a woman like Eloise. Apparently, I didn't hide my despair very well because Mr. Erickson called me into his office. "So, Walt, what wiped that stupid Midwestern smile off your face, leaving despondency in its place?" Eric asked. "I'm sorry, it's personal. I would not like to bother anyone with my problems. Hiding anything from Eric is useless." Soon he had the whole story. He leaned back in his chair, folded his hands as if in prayer, and rested his chin on his fingertips. "When I was a boy," he began, "this town was still ruled by the Irish and the Jews. It was interesting to watch them. Americans in the third and even fourth generation, who spoke with an accent or inserted phrases in Yiddish into their speech. These were men and women who graduated from Fordham and Columbia University, but mastered the art of being professionals with an ethnic touch. They're gone now. Sometimes I miss the fun they brought to political art. Politicians are now black professionals or Latinos. They lack the same pathos, or so it seems to me, and I think they take themselves too seriously. I'm sorry, Mr. Erickson, I don't understand." "My dearest wish is that you never lose the innocence of the Midwest," he said, sighing. "Walter, your girlfriend's man was born Rodney Kaufman. His father was the heir to the Kaufman department store fortune, and his mother was a Puerto Rican Jew, Louisa Ruiz. Rodney is married to Sophie Sloan, a member of the richest Sloan family. For political reasons, he took his mother's surname and the Spanish version of his first surname. The Roddy boy is a professional Latin American and a regular politician. Your lady apparently will prefer you to him for 3 good reasons. First of all, the man is 47. Your lady is much younger. Secondly, he is married to a good Jewish woman with whom he has 3 children. This woman is not very jealous, allowing her husband to play on the side, but she will categorically object to being replaced, as well as her rich and influential family. And thirdly, there is Roddy himself and his family. These are progressive times, but I doubt he's trying to offend his wealthy and politically supportive family by having a relationship with a Christian girl. But if she's dating him," I noted. Eric frowned impatiently, as he did in case of stupid questions. "How old is this lady?" he asked. 29. "A lady with a running biological clock, and you are a suitable 26-year-old lawyer. I think you haven't been able to properly assess your weight in this case. The introduction to the Roddy boy equation was done just to get you properly motivated to move forward. 4 dates at this age with a 29-year-old single woman mean that everything is serious. So either be serious or get lost," Eric Erickson concluded. After talking to the boss, I felt better and, moreover, encouraged. On our next date, I pressed on and was rewarded with a warm response. "If we're going any further, I need to know that you're serious," she said. "I can ask the same thing. Do you speak in general?" "Yes, and about Roddy. I've been dating him for several years now," she said. "But he's not serious, and I'm serious," I replied, once again thinking about how smart Erickson was. She took me to her bed. I wasn't a virgin, although I didn't have much experience. She had a lot more experience, and she used every bit of it. I barely made it through the night. A week later, I moved into her apartment. The apartment was large by New York standards, with one of those corridors that seemed to go on forever. The marriage proposal was inevitable. She started hinting as soon as I moved into the apartment. When we met, Eloise was 29. She worked as a junior manager at Sanderson Financial Management and was already on the top management step. And soon after our engagement, she became vice president. I realized that she was smart and somewhat meticulous, but I was almost shocked by her organizational skills. The preparations for the wedding took barely 6 weeks. In family terms, she was the eldest of 3 children and the only daughter. Her father was also a lawyer, but was involved in real estate development in Westchester and Putnam counties, north of New York City. As far as I can tell, he was very interested in politics. That's why they planned a really big wedding so well and quickly. Death reduced my family to an only sister. Nancy now lived with her friend on the West Coast near Portland. She stopped talking to me the day she told me she was a lesbian. Maybe it was because I wasn't thrilled, but there was some kind of gap that couldn't be closed anymore. I invited her to the wedding, but she refused. My own career has settled into a comfortable rut. Now I was doing less serious things without Eric's help, He didn't hide that he was preparing me. Bankruptcy was at a standstill, and Eric made no secret that I had to be ready when things got going, because he was preparing to retire. You have everything you need. Smart enough and a pleasant personality, but you need to learn how to work, he said. I studied the code of laws and cases very diligently. Yes, but you need some techniques that haven't been recorded yet. On the Friday before the wedding, I learned a new trick. Eloise and her mother chose Labor Day for the wedding. I didn't understand something about this early date, but it also meant that we had the weekend off to prepare, and we could fly to the Caribbean for the honeymoon that her parents arranged for us on the Tuesday after the wedding. The suitcases were packed and stood against the wall in the long hallway of our apartment, 3 for Eloise and 1 for me. I was a little nervous about the wedding, but I didn't have time to think about it that morning. A week before that, my future bride left for the family home in Westchester so that we could be apart for a while before the wedding. It'll make the honeymoon even better and keep my wedding jitters from driving hubby away, she said with a laugh. At 10 o'clock on Friday, the last working day of August, 3 days before the wedding, I had a hearing in the bankruptcy court about the formation of the first day. Such a decision is made at an early stage of reorganization in order to establish rules for the further work of the debtor under the protection of the court. In a small case like mine, the hearings are not very formal. Usually there are only a few lawyers and a judge present. Basically, it's the bank's lawyer and the debtor's lawyer, like me. Judge Marks usually followed the rules. That Friday, I entered my office ready to take the file and go to court, but the secretary told me that the judge's secretary had called to arrange a telephone hearing as soon as I entered. I was immediately nervous. The judge's secretary connected all the parties, and Judge Marks said, "So, Amanda, tell me what your problem is with this ruling." Amanda Moskowitz was the bank's lawyer. She was smart and knew the law. Her arguments were precise and clearly addressed the weakest points of my request. She was an excellent lawyer, but not very pleasant to look at. She was nicknamed Sugar, which made no sense. She was short, less than 5'2", and plump, especially in the lower half, but I always thought she had a pretty face. When Amanda finished, I tried to speak, but the judge interrupted me. "A resolution is being issued. My secretary will fax it to the parties," he said when the phone went silent. Amanda just laughed when I asked her, "What just happened?" "Judge Marks received tickets from my firm yesterday for the last days of the Saratoga race. He needs to be north of Albany by 1 o'clock. He can't talk to us on the phone. Today, for the sake of appearances, he ruled against me in a case that doesn't really matter, but wait until next time and I'll stab you," she said, still laughing. "It's not the way I like to win," I complained. "Take whatever you can get," she replied and paused. "You know, my aunts would say that you are a very good young man for a goy." Still laughing, she ended the conversation. Around this time, Eric came and told me to take the day off and rest before the wedding. When I left, I couldn't help but ask, "Who are the goyim?" He smiled. "It's you and me, not Jews." "And what?" "Someone said that I am a good young man for a goy." "Oh, a compliment. Someone likes you." I headed to the apartment, thinking that I could go to Westchester early. Anyway, I wasn't supposed to arrive until the next day. The wedding rehearsal is on Saturday evening. But damn it, why kill time in the city? I expected to be busy with my own business. It should have taken almost the whole day and maybe even the evening. We would have written and rewritten every word of the resolution to please all the participants, but this did not happen. So why not get a head start? At first I tried to call, but Eloise's phone switched to voicemail, so I made a fateful choice. I called her parents' house in Westchester, hoping to talk to someone or at least leave a message. I think it was one of those random circumstances that changes everything. None of the Schaffer family was at home. An ordinary maid, Rosita, took the day off to adjust the dress she would wear to the wedding. Her cousin was filling in for her. My cousin was a woman with limited knowledge of English whom I had never spoken to. She didn't recognize my name. "I want to leave a message for Miss Eloise." "This is Walter," I said for the 3rd time. "She's not here, she's in town. I know she lives in the city, but she came home for the wedding. This is Walter. I'll be there later today." "She's in town. I'm staying at a hotel. Come to the wedding tomorrow," Rosita's cousin said. A second passed, but my curiosity was aroused. "Which hotel?" "The Plaza," came the reply. I'm not a suspicious person, but who wouldn't pause after such a conversation? It was almost noon when I broke down and called the Plaza Hotel. Our reception was held in Westchester County, not at the famous Plaza Hotel in New York. Something was going on that I wasn't told about. There was a bachelorette party the previous week, but perhaps the ladies decided to arrange another prenuptial celebration. I called the hotel and asked for Eloise Schaefer. No one registered under this name. Then maybe it was self-doubt that made me ask, "What about Rodrigo Ruiz?" "No, I'm sorry," the young woman replied. "Try Rodney Kaufman." There was a pause, and she said, "Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Rodney Kaufman are staying with us in the honeymoon suite. Please connect me. It could still be someone else." "It's not such a rare name," I said to myself while the beeps were ringing. When the man answered, I almost hung up, but I had to ask, "Eloise Schaefer, please me." "Elle, it's for you," I heard him say. "Hello?" she said. I recognized her voice, but I couldn't speak. "Hello, is there anyone alive?" "There's no one there," she told him. "He was. He asked you." "Hello? This is Walter. You shouldn't come to the wedding. I won't be there," I said, finally finding my voice. After hanging up, I heard her shout my name before the phone went dead. I don't remember the next one well. I was shocked. He sat in the apartment as if paralyzed. In a sense, I was paralyzed. My strength seemed to have left my body. All the good things in my life seemed to have disappeared. It was all a lie. Romance, living together, a fancy apartment. It was our apartment, but in fact, according to the lease agreement, it belonged to her. My mind was in lockdown mode. I knew I had to get up, get my suitcase from the hallway and leave. I had nowhere to go, but I had to get out of the place where I was. Someone opened the apartment door. It was her. I vaguely wondered how she got here so quickly. I looked at my watch and saw that it was 2 o'clock. It occurred to me that the judge should be at the races. This fact has changed my life. "Walter, we need to talk," she said. "Have you been there all week?" I asked. She was standing in the middle of the living room. Her eyes avoided meeting mine. "We just said goodbye," she said. "So it never ended," I accused. "Walter, stop it. You know I love you." "How would I know that?" "I'll never see him again. We broke up," she said. "Why?" "I've been with him for 7 years. Almost since the day I moved to the city." "No. Why finish it?" "Because I'm marrying you on Monday," she said. "No, you're not coming out." "Walter, please be reasonable. Everything is arranged. There will be more than 300 guests." I didn't say anything. There was no point. I got up and walked past her. "Where are you going? We have to settle this," she cried. I picked up my suitcase and went out. She followed me, shouting for me to stop. In the end, she gave up. I wandered aimlessly for quite a long time. I vaguely felt that I was walking towards the bridge. It was getting dark, and I was tired of walking. I crossed Court Street, not far from the city hall. I found a small bar. It was full of people on Friday night, but I found a dark corner and climbed into it. "Hi," she said. I looked up and saw Sugar Moskowitz. She had a glass in each hand. She put one in front of me. "I thought you looked like you could use it," she said. "Thanks," I stuttered, taking a sip of a very strong drink. "It's called a stinger, and as you can see, I'm not a religious girl," she said. "Religious?" She smiled. It was a beautiful smile, and she explained, "Drinking at a singles bar with Goyim on a Friday night, and what should I tell my mother about that suitcase?" When she said that, I looked down, suddenly remembering my suitcase. "Oh, well, I had to leave. After all, this is her apartment," I said, taking a sip of the drink that burned to the very bottom. Sugar Amanda didn't ask me any questions. She told funny stories about herself and about people we mutually knew from bankruptcy court. This is a narrow specialization, and everyone knows each other. She kept my glass full and tried to make me laugh. I think she already knew that I was engaged and getting married soon, but she wasn't surprised that I ended up in a Brooklyn bar on the Friday before the wedding with a suitcase. Perhaps she had a few drinks before I arrived and did not understand the meaning of the suitcase and where I am now. Almost the only thing I remember about that evening is how Amanda helped me into the car and said, "It's not far to go." Later, I had a dream about Eloise. She pinned me to the bed and rode me like a cowboy. It's not her favorite position, but she seemed to be enjoying herself a lot more than usual. I had to go to the bathroom. The need was urgent, but when I got out of bed, I realized that I had no idea where I was. The apartment has changed. For a moment, I was completely disoriented, and then everything came back to me in one sharp and painful memory. I left Eloise in her apartment. And where am I now? My head hurt, and it felt like someone had stuffed it with cotton wool. I didn't remember much about the previous evening. I remember going into a small bar on Court Street. Someone I know showed up there. For a moment, I couldn't remember who it was. And then I remembered. Amanda Sugar Moskowitz. What was she doing there, and what was I doing here, naked in an unfamiliar bed? I was in a small room. It barely contained a double bed. There was no other furniture in the room. The bed adjoined directly to the window, which stretched from the middle of the wall to the ceiling. I was alone in this bed, which had signs that a second person was sleeping on it. There was no closet in the room, and my clothes were nowhere to be seen. In fact, the room itself could have been an overly large closet with a bed in it. But there was a door. It did not open until the end, as it was blocked by the bed. I looked out. There was a more spacious room. There was a window in the wall on one side. The sidewalk was visible outside the window. I was in what is called the English basement in this part of the world. This is the floor located under the main building. It is half above and half below ground. The windows started just below the sidewalk level. This room was converted into a small apartment, or, as I learned later, into 2 apartments, the one I was in, and an even smaller back apartment. The main room was divided by a counter into a dining room and a kitchen. The bay window was a kind of living room with 2 small chairs and a window seat. Seeing no one, I went outside in search of a bathroom and my clothes. There was a door at the back of the room. When I got out, it opened. Amanda Moskowitz came out in a bathrobe, wiping her wet hair with a towel. "Oh, you're awake," she said, noticing me. "Just in time. It must be almost noon." My hands flew to cover my genitals, which only caused giggles. "It's a little late for modesty," she said. "I saw everything last night. All I could do was run past her, assuming that the room she came out of with her hair wet was a bathroom." I turned out to be right, and closing the door, lifted the toilet seat and emptied the contents of my bladder into the toilet. It was a small bathroom with only a shower stall without a bathtub. I decided to take advantage of this and wash up before discussing with the hostess what happened to my clothes and suitcase. The shower was maybe small, but the water was hot and soothing for my very hungover body. Updated, I searched in vain for a towel. Wet and naked, I had no choice but to go out and meet Amanda. I opened the bathroom door and walked out, only to realize that we were no longer alone. A young, dark-haired woman was sitting at the table, looking straight at me with a wide grin on her face. Amanda was in the small, open-plan kitchen, fiddling with cups and a coffee pot. "How do you feel about coffee?" Amanda asked as lightly as if I wasn't standing there naked. I jumped back out the bathroom door and called out, "Can I have some clothes, please, or at least a towel?" Both women burst out laughing, but Amanda stopped to say, "The towels are in the closet, as are your suitcase and the clothes you tore off last night." Sticking my head out the door, I asked, "And where can there be a closet?" Still giggling, Amanda pointed with the coffee pot at the lattice doors at the back of the room behind the table, and right in front of what must have been the front door to the apartment. "I'd bring them to you, but as you can see, I'm busy," Amanda said. The other woman made no attempt to get up, and I had no choice but to run to the closet, and I ran away. When I reached the closet, I opened the doors. My clothes were in there. The suit and shirt were neatly hung up, and the underwear was on the suitcase. I grabbed onto the ladder, pulling on my shorts and shirt as fast as I could, but all the while I could hear the giggling of the women behind me. "Walter, this is my sister, Sonia Rabinovich, by the way," Amanda said. "Hello, Mr. Stillman," Sonia said. "Hello," I replied, opening my suitcase to take out my jeans. "You don't have to get dressed because of me," Sonia said. "I am a younger sister, but I am already married, and I have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Naked male bodies don't shock me." They both laughed about it while I was pulling on my jeans. "Let's go get some coffee," Amanda invited. And Sonia brought Bailey's. "In a minute," I replied. "You didn't tell me he was so shy," Sonia whispered to her sister. "I didn't know," Amanda replied, also in a loud whisper. "We kind of barely know each other." "You're a free woman, Amanda Moskowitz," Sonia giggled. After putting on my trousers and shirt, I turned to take a seat at a small table. I needed coffee. "I like it black without sugar," I said. Sonia giggled and whispered to her sister, "I think he got his sugar last night." They burst out laughing. "I have a headache." Amanda handed me a cup of very strong coffee. As I was putting the cup in front of me, my cell phone rang. It was Sonia's phone, and she took it out of a large leather purse lying on the floor at her feet. "Oh, hi," Sonia said, answering. She closed the phone and whispered, "Aunt Hester." "Of course I remembered," Sonia continued. I'm at Amanda's now, but she has guests, and I didn't have a chance to mention it. There was a pause, then Sonia said with a grin, No, her company is a man. Amanda ran her hand over her throat as if cutting it off, but Sonia calmly continued, Yes, he's cute, but a little shy. No, definitely not a Jew. Yes, I'm absolutely sure. Sonia whispered into the phone. I caught a glimpse of him coming out of the shower. Sonia was laughing uncontrollably now. She wants to talk to you, Sonia said, handing the phone to Amanda. Hi, Auntie, Amanda said into Sonia's phone. No, I'll never forget Dad's birthday. Tomorrow at 6 and at 7 we have dinner. Understood. Oh, he's just a friend. Really? There was a pause while Hester was apparently talking. It won't work. He's a friend from work. I'm sure he'll feel awkward at a family party. Amanda handed the phone back to her sister. Sonia listened while her aunt was talking. I don't know, Sonia said and then turned to me. She wants to know your name. What should I tell her? Walter, I replied. Walter Stillman. Walter, and I'm pretty sure they slept together last night. Sonia, Amanda screamed. Aunt Sophie is on the line right now, says they want to meet him. No. Oh, honey, no, Amanda screamed. Then Sonia handed the phone to me saying, My Aunt Sophie wants to talk to you. I picked up the phone and held it to my ear. Hello, Walter. I'm Amanda's Aunt Sophie, and my sister Hester and I are having a birthday party for our brother Leonard, Amanda and Sonia's father. We would like you to come with our Mandy. Could you do that? It will mean a lot to the family. I don't know, I would not like to interfere. Mr. Moskowitz might not want to see me at his party, I said, looking for a polite way to decline. I'll leave that up to Amanda. Then I handed the phone to Amanda. She argued with the aunts for a good 10 minutes while Sonia grinned mischievously. The aunts talking on the phone disconnected, each in turn arguing with her niece. Finally, Amanda gave up. Okay, I'll get him, she said, and then hung up. Sugar, sugar, sugar. She does that, you know, Sonia said. What? I asked. With a final grin, Sonia got up and said, Well, it looks like my work here is done. It's time to go unload my husband before my kids drive him crazy. Left alone, Amanda turned to me and said, Look, you don't have to go. My family can be a bit overbearing sometimes. I just don't understand why your aunts would want to see a stranger at a family gathering. Amanda gave a short, almost sad laugh and said, Sonia is my younger sister, almost 4 years younger. I turned 30 on my last birthday. She already has 3 children. My aunts and my whole family think that I should already be married and pregnant. It looks like your biological clock is ticking on their shelf, but they still don't know me, and apparently I'm of the wrong religion. But you're the right gender, she said and paused before continuing. You see, I used to have a neighbor here. It helped pay $3,500 a month for the apartment. As you probably know, junior bankruptcy specialists are not paid that much. I nodded, knowing about the limited salaries in our part of the legal business, but then it dawned on me. There's only one bed. Was your roommate a woman? Yes, but don't jump to conclusions, Sugar said. For Jessie, my former roommate, drinking was the deciding factor. She wanted a relationship that I couldn't give her. And here I am, almost straight, a Jewish spinster. I was thinking about what she said while munching on a Bailey, a flat breakfast bun that has a depressed center and is usually covered with onion flakes. She looks a little like a bagel, but not like that. Finally, I asked the question that was bothering me. Last night Amanda burst into loud laughter and said, Yes, we were together, although I didn't really like being called Eloise. I'm sorry, I said, feeling my face turn red. Hey, don't be a prude. We were both a little drunk, she said. Yes, you were very drunk. I drank my coffee for a long time and tried to figure out how my life took such a strange turn. Yesterday morning, I was on the phone, conducting a case against a woman who is now sitting across from me in a bathrobe, a certain Amanda Moskowitz, who was affectionately called Sugar. Yesterday morning, I was excited about the upcoming wedding with Eloise. This is too much, I said. What? This, I said. Eloise. And the fact that I'm here with you. She didn't laugh, but looking back, it was difficult. Look, you've had a hard time with Eloise and all that. How about we relax here today? I thought for a moment. I don't think I can stand being alone right now. If you don't mind, I'll stay. She smiled and said, Good, that's what we did. We went back to bed. Wow, you definitely like this, I said, climbing up between her legs. It's been a long time since the last guy, she muttered. But not girlfriends? I asked out of curiosity. She propped herself up on her elbows and looked at me, then answered, I've slept with a lot more women than men, if that's what you're asking. I was lying next to her and a little further on the bed. In one swift movement, she was on top of me. She looked into my eyes and said, In my opinion, nothing compares to a man in bed. But in a relationship, I need something more. I need someone I can communicate with, and more than that, I need someone I can respect as a person. How do I fit this definition? You are a very respectful partner in bed. Obviously, your fiancé has put a lot of effort into improving your skills. I didn't have a good answer to that statement. I was outraged by its subtext, but Eloise really trained me a lot in the skills of behavior in the bedroom. However, Amanda continued, you're here in my bed because you're a good person. I've been watching you. You never hurt anyone if you can help. You are honest and treat women as people, not as objects. In short, you're one of the good guys. This is a group that is in short supply right now. I replied. That's all very well, but is that how you should describe a novice lawyer? It looks like you've been following me. Was she following you? Well, of course I did. I saw you on Court Street and followed you to the bar, didn't I? If Miss Eloise Schaffer has lost track of her trophy fiancé, I'm not one to miss an opportunity. I'm not a trophy, I insisted. You're not going to tell me she was in love with you, are you? No, probably not, I said, feeling all the sadness of the situation wash over me. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to offend you. In the morning, the aunts called, reminded Amanda of the upcoming party, and asked if she could come early to help with the preparations. Mandy, don't forget to bring Walter with you. Sonia told us all about him, and everyone really wants to meet him, Aunt Hester told Amanda. I don't know what Sonia told you, but he's not my boyfriend. We'll bring him anyway. He knows he's invited. If he comes, he'll come, Amanda said and hung up. I understand they're waiting for me, I said with a grin. You don't have to go. What else should I do? I didn't want to be alone, not now. Amanda had distracted me from the disaster in my personal life, and I had no desire to sit and reflect on what Eloise had done. All right, she said. But keep in mind that you will be subjected to close attention, and you will be treated as a potential suitor. Well, in a sense, I am the groom. But if you don't mind, let's keep my personal problem a secret, I said. Sounds good to me. That cheating Eloise doesn't exist anymore. But only for today, because you have to deal with her, and the sooner the better. I know, I said with a slight sigh. Amanda reached across the table to cover my hands with her own and said, Walter, you must either go through with this marriage or end it tomorrow. Anyway, you're going to be in big trouble. I can't go through it, not now. Don't be so hasty. If you refuse now, it will have big consequences for your career and life. There will be a huge scandal. Why? I'm not going to divulge the reason, and I'm sure she won't. Oh, my poor innocence, she said, squeezing my hands tightly. Do you really think people didn't know about Commissioner Ruiz and Eloise Schaffer? They've been together for quite a long time. I thought they broke up. Amanda didn't laugh, but her crooked smile said it all. I was being played. Eloise dated Ruiz the whole time we were together. But why? I asked. If she wants to remain his mistress, then there's no point in involving me in this. He wants to run for governor next year, she said. Your marriage to Eloise seems to have put an end to the affair, and you were a good catch. Such a young, decent, professional man, whom every cis woman in New York is looking for. Cis women. A person who identifies himself with his gender by birth. In this case, a woman, Eloise Schaffer. A young woman in need of a partner to quell rumors about her affair with an elderly married politician. She played me, as you New Yorkers like to say. Oh, don't feel sorry for yourself. Perhaps she was just saying goodbye, as she claimed. A week before our wedding. Would you rather she did it the week after? I'd rather she didn't do it at all. In fact, I insist on it. Well, you took revenge on her with me. You can still go to Westchester and marry her. This is not going to happen. Hey, you need to pull yourself together before you do anything rash. If you don't come to church tomorrow, people will ask why. Well, let it be. Okay, time out. Scandal is not good for anyone. You, my friend, are a junior lawyer in the bankruptcy department. Commissioner Ruiz, on the other hand, is a very big shot. You'll start a wave and his boat may rock, but yours will sink. Are you saying I'm going to lose my job? So what? I'm saying you're going to lose your career. No one will hire you. I had to pause, but not for long. Amanda, I said, maybe I'm just an inexperienced guy from Iowa, But when Eloise accepted my offer, she made a commitment to me. She didn't keep her promise, and you can't make me keep mine. Amanda just shook her head. Finally, she said, "Come on, you stubborn cornhusker, get dressed. I'm taking you to meet my family." It is not every day that they manage to meet a real living Presbyterian. Actually, my family is Lutheran. Same shit, she winked. At 5 o'clock in the evening, we took a yellow taxi to the Moskowitz house on Beverly Road. It was forbidden to use the services of a car service station. Uncle Morty was a taxi driver, or was until he retired. Morty now lived on his Social Security allowance with his two sisters, Hester and Sophie, in the house the sisters inherited from their parents. Morty was married, but his wife eloped 30 years ago with a shoe salesman, and this fact was apparently never discussed. Aunt Sophie's husband died in Vietnam. Hester never got married. Only Amanda's father, Leonard, the youngest of the siblings, had children. Leonard and his wife, Rebecca, had 2 girls, Amanda and Sonia, and now 3 grandchildren, thanks to Sonia and her husband, Gerald, Jerry Rabinovich. The Moskowitz family home was located in the Flatbush neighborhood of Brooklyn, which realtors call Ditmas or Ditmas Park. When we arrived at a huge 2-story house on a large plot exceeding the standard size for urban life, I did not notice any park. Unlike Amanda's apartment, which was across the street from a small park in a quiet area, her aunts and uncles lived on a busy avenue. The house was built in the Queen Anne style, not big enough to be a mansion, but the single-family house was larger than one would expect in a city like New York. Aunt Hester, a short, sturdy woman with metallic gray hair, met us at the door. First, she hugged Amanda and greeted her, calling her Mandy. Then she turned to me, examined me for a very long time, and said, "Not bad at all, a handsome young man." "Oh, I think he's very handsome," Aunt Sophie said, appearing from the back of the house. Sophie was a tall, dark-haired woman. Both sisters seemed like an incompatible couple. Sophie hugged Amanda, and both aunts led us to the kitchen where they were preparing evening dinner. There was a large cake on the kitchen table. The kitchen smelled of roast meat that was languishing in the oven, and the sweet aroma of vanilla. "Will you peel the potatoes, Mandy?" Sophie asked, handing her a potato peeler and a colander filled with freshly washed potatoes. "I'll take your man to help set the table," Hester said, taking my hand and leading me through the swing door into the wood-paneled dining room. The room was a long, wide rectangle. A thick burgundy carpet covered the parquet floor. Dark oak panels rose from the floor to half of the wall, where the paper, elaborately engraved with roses, attracted the eye upward. The ceiling was an intricate lattice of mahogany and oak. A modest chandelier hung down from a mahogany medallion with ornately carved flowers. Hester led me to the cupboards along the near wall. Cabinets occupied most of the wall on the short side of the room. The shelves of the cabinets were filled with numerous sets of porcelain plates. She led us to the far closet and said, "Today we will use these plates." After saying that, she smiled at me and said, "It's not easy to be a Jew. All these dishes are necessary." At that time, I had only a vague idea that one set of dishes was intended for meat and the other for dairy. Hester handed me a stack of plates, and we began to set the massive table on clawed legs. It was covered with a snow-white linen tablecloth. I couldn't resist secretly examining the bottoms of the plates and the tags on the linen. The porcelain was imported from England and the linen from Ireland. The real thing, I thought, just like people, real. While Hester was setting the table and I was carrying the dishes, she seemed to be asking me pointlessly. I assumed that this was done in order to separate me from her niece. Soon she already knew my entire personal history, with the exception of the failed marriage. When we put the last silver fork on the last plate, she said so casually, "It doesn't hurt, you know. Just a little piece. Most children don't even cry." The meaning of these words escaped me. However, before I could ask for an explanation, we heard a noise in the hallway. An imperious female voice was calling, "I'm here and I brought the birthday boy." It was Rebecca Moskowitz, also known as Judge Levin of the U.S. District Court, who entered. As it turned out, she was the mother of Amanda Moskowitz. Her father was Leonard Moskowitz, a professor of economics at New York University. I was invited to Leonard's birthday party. Hester pushed me into the kitchen, and she went to greet her brother and sister-in-law. When I entered the kitchen, Amanda was peeling potatoes and putting them on the stove. She turned to me and said, "We need to wait here while my aunts break the news that you're here as their guest." "Am I going to be a problem for you?" I asked, suddenly feeling the need to protect her. "No, but maybe a little shocking. I've never brought a man home before. Mom can be a little critical, so be prepared. The situation was awkward, and it only got worse when we were called into the living room to introduce me to her parents. The living room was a large, cozy room, furnished in the style of the first half of the 20th century. It was possible to feel calm in this room, but I felt tense. On the way, Amanda took a small box from a light jacket that she had hung in the hallway when we arrived that day. The box was clearly wrapped as a birthday present. There was an awkward silence when we entered the living room. Sugar's father broke the silence with a smile and a joke. "Is this young man my birthday present, Mandy?" he asked. "No, Dad," Sugar replied softly. "I brought you this." She came over to give her father the present she had brought. She did not let go of my hand, and I realized that she had been holding it tightly for some time. "Well," her father said, "I was hoping for a son, in-law, but I'm sure I'll like this one too." At these words, he smiled at his daughter. Opening the bag, he took out a baseball that was obviously used. His smile widened, and the others looked at him in confusion. Leonard said, "Thanks," and then he picked up the ball. "This is a game ball signed by the Mets team," he said, and stood up to hug his daughter. I heard him whisper in Sugar's ear, "Still, I'd prefer a son-in-law." Sugar whispered something back, but I couldn't hear it. Her father giggled, but when I looked back, her mother stared at me. Just at that moment, Sonia arrived with her husband and 3 children. The kids rushed into the living room to take their places in the center of everyone's attention. "Oh, it's good that you came," Sonia said, giving me a short hug. Introducing me to her husband Jerry, a tall, thin guy who can be blown away by a good wind, Sonia said, "This is Sugar's new love. As you can see, at least she got the gender right this time." Jerry shook my hand and said, "Don't pay attention to Sonia. She just likes to tease her older sister." Soon the conversation in the living room turned to the topic of the children's latest adventures and the gifts they had brought to Grandpa. It was nice to be out of the spotlight, but I could feel Amanda's mother's gaze on me. The dinner was simple, but delicious nonetheless. The conversations at the table were filled with the hidden joy that these people got from being together. From time to time, I was asked a question. If Amanda could answer it, she immediately started answering it for me. I answered more personal questions simply or brushed them off. Yes, my parents are dead. The farm is in Iowa. I only have a sister. I ignored all the questions about my sister, partly because I didn't know how to answer them. However, over coffee and birthday cake, everything came out. Judge Levin was watching what was happening, and while the children were busy eating a sticky cake, she struck. "Tell me, Walter, are you related to Stillman, who is marrying Eloise Schaffer tomorrow?" I paused before answering, but I spoke before Amanda, who was sitting across from me, had time to give the sharp answer I had anticipated. "Yes and no," I said. "I was the one who was supposed to marry Eloise, but it's over. And before you ask, your daughter has nothing to do with the annulment of my marriage." "Really?" Amanda's mother asked, turning to her daughter. "Yes, it is, if it concerns you," Amanda said, showing her hostility. "To tell you the truth, I didn't want to bring Walter here, but he was invited and he was kind enough to come. I saw that my mother was about to say something else, but Leonard Moskowitz spoke up and silenced his wife. "Rebecca, shut up," he said, and before his wife could answer. Obviously, the young man found out about Mr. Kaufman. I've been watching Walter all evening, and he doesn't seem like a man who could put up with it. It was as if he had splashed cold water in his wife's face. The judge was suddenly speechless. Looking around the table, he realized that if Amanda's parents were aware of the situation, the other diners were not. Amanda intervened. "I have known Walter for some time and admire him from afar. When I found him that evening, lost and alone, I saw my chance to get to know him better. He was offended by a truly evil woman, and yes, Mom, I love him. He's too good not to be in love with him." While she was saying this, Amanda came around the table and hugged me from behind. "Well done, my niece," Uncle Morty said, ending the conversation about Amanda and me. I hardly remember what happened after that, except that there was an atmosphere of general satisfaction at the table. As we were leaving in the yellow taxi, I turned to Amanda. "Are you serious about this?" I asked. "What? What is it?" she asked, trying to evade the question. I couldn't stand it and demanded, "When you said that you love me, are you serious?" It seemed to get very quiet in the taxi, and then she slowly raised her head and said, "Yes, I love you. When I first saw you many months ago, I wanted you. But now it's more than just attraction. I love you, Walter Stillman." 30 minutes later, I was arrested. Eloise had obviously been sitting in our apartment all Friday evening, waiting for me to return. Where did she think I could go? However, when I did not return by the next morning, she became desperate. The wedding was scheduled for Monday, and she was suddenly afraid that I might not come. In a panic, she called the only person who, in her opinion, was losing more than she was. Rodrigo Ruiz, aka Rodney Kaufman, immediately began a search through the police. It took them a day to interview all the bartenders on Court Street to find out that I left the Shadow Lady bar in the company of a short brunette. Since Amanda and I took a taxi 12 blocks to her apartment in Cobble Hill, the police decided to interview all the taxi drivers who worked in that area that night. It wasn't until late Sunday that they found out that the taxi had dropped us off at the corner of Clinton and Congress. They quickly determined that the corner basement apartment belonged to Amanda Moskowitz, a woman matching the description of my companion on Friday evening. The police found only a dark and empty apartment, but undaunted, they parked a couple of patrol cars to wait for the tenant's return. It was an impatient quartet of officers that Amanda and I found upon arrival. They took me away quickly, despite Amanda's objections. At midnight, I found myself in a small room that badly needed cleaning and a new paint job. They sat me down at a table and handcuffed me. No one explained what crime I was accused of. Someone opened the door and Eloise came in. She looked beautiful as always. "So you're responsible for this?" I demanded. My tone was harsh and my anger and frustration were obvious. She looked a little stunned, standing on the other side of the table. There were 2 chairs on her side, but she didn't try to sit down. "Walter, please try to understand. When you didn't come home, I was worried that something had happened to you. That's why you arrested me. For what?" "You are not under arrest, but are under guard pending a possible psychiatric examination," said a tall, very handsome man. In fact, he was more impressive than his photographs. He entered quietly, and while he was talking, he was moving towards Eloise. He was more than 20 years older than me. All his efforts could not hide his middle age, and I could see that he was making great efforts to contain the influence of time. "Rodney Kaufman, I suppose." I said it with all the venom I could put into my voice. "Rodrigo Ruiz, but Walt, you can call me Rod, because I hope that we will become friends. For you, Mr. Stillman, and I have no desire to be friends. It's a pity because I think that you are in a difficult situation and could use my friendship." I raised my arms a few centimeters, causing the chains to tighten on the table. "You can keep me here, but not for long," I said with more confidence than I felt. "Hopefully long enough for you to listen to Eloise." She had been standing there without saying a word, but now she spoke. "Walter, you're acting under the wrong impression. Rod and I are just friends. Whatever relationship we had, it's over. If you had stayed late on Friday, I would have told you everything. We have a saying in Iowa. I may have been born at night, but it wasn't last night." "I found you in his hotel room," I objected. "Anyway, you two have a wedding date set today, and it's in everyone's best interest that you keep it." "I'm sorry, but I refuse to marry that cheater," I said. Eloise let out a little cry of pain, but Rod just smiled and said, Language, please. Let's keep our composure." "Would you prefer me to call her a cheater? Because that's what she is." I realized that I had slightly offended Rodney, but he continued to smile. Eloise turned away, crying. "This attitude will lead to a lot of trouble. You're being very stupid, young man. Eloise is a wonderful woman who will make a great wife. If you don't get married, there will be a terrible scandal. Reporters are expected at this wedding. This is a social event. Eloise's reputation will be ruined, as well as mine, because, of course, the reason will become known. People love to gossip, and this is going to be a great gossip. I was told that you have a promising career in a prestigious firm. If you don't marry Miss Schaffer today, your career will evaporate, and I doubt you'll find a job elsewhere," he threatened. Now it's my turn to smile. "I would not marry this cheater for the position of senior partner, and I certainly will not remain a junior lawyer in the bankruptcy department." "I told you he'd be unreasonable," Eloise interjected, her back to me and clearly crying. Rod just sighed and said, "Okay, Mr. Stillman, how much will it cost me to make Eloise Mrs. Stillman?" "Believe me, you don't have enough money. It doesn't have to be forever. A year or two, and then a quiet divorce." "Won't people ask why?" I challenged him. He didn't flinch, and something told me that he had more than one iron in this fire. "The situation at the time of the divorce will be my problem. Name your price for a marriage within 2 years." "How pregnant is she?" I asked, finally realizing. Eloise turned to me. "The baby could be yours, you know," she hissed. "Yes, I said. But I think I'll wait for the DNA test. Rodney just said, "How much?" "Not for the world," I almost spat at him. Further conversation was interrupted by the appearance of a short, fat, bald man in his 60s. He was followed by 2 uniformed officers. When he entered, he said, "Hello, Rod, Miss Schaffer. And you must be Walter Stillman," he said, putting his hand on my shoulder. "I'm your lawyer, Cy Lebowitz. And this," he said, handing Rodney the paper, "is a copy of the writ of habeas corpus that I just filed for registration. You got up pretty late, didn't you, Cy?" Rod said. "Well, you know how it is. Things are going a little slow." Miss Schaffer was acting in the best interests of her fiancé. "You're forcing us to seek a compulsory commitment," Rodney threatened. "I don't understand how you can do this, because the warrant was issued on behalf of his sister, his only living and closest relative." "Woke her up, didn't you, Cy?" "Actually, no. It's still early on the West Coast." Commissioner Rodrigo Ruiz, a.k.a. Rodney Kaufman, shrugged his shoulders. He was defeated. Cy took me out and Amanda was waiting for me. Her mother, the judge, woke up Cy and the judge, who signed the order for my release. That was the last time I saw Eloise. The child was never born. I do not know the reason. I know that her biological clock was ticking, and I know that she wanted a child from him, not from me. Nevertheless, I am sure that if the choice was between a scandal that would harm her lover and an abortion, she would choose the latter. As for his threat to destroy my career, I have no doubt that Commissioner and gubernatorial candidate Rodrigo Ruiz tried to do everything possible to destroy it, but circumstances intervened. From the 2nd to the 14th of September 2008, I had a honeymoon vacation, and my destruction never took place. On the day I returned to work, September 15th, Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy, and the financial world turned upside down. Eric Erickson became the most important partner in the firm, and I became the most important lawyer. It took 6 months of 90-hour weeks for Amanda and me before we could get married. We had to make it because she was pregnant, and it was clearly visible. Amanda didn't even think about taking precautions, because before that first weekend we spent together, she hadn't slept with a man for quite some time. The eldest became a girl, as did the 3 following ones. However, 4 turned out to be enough. Amanda became a judge, following in her mother's footsteps, and I have my own firm. When people ask me what the secret of my successful career and marriage is, I answer that I owe it all to one day of judging at the racetrack, one broken heart, and a girl named Sugar.